there, Tyson France with Motion Revolver here. Thanks so much for purchasing the Wall Street Stocks and Finance package. I just wanted to give you a quick overview here to show you how the project is structured, and then we will break down each element into its own tutorial, since there's a bit to cover here, and I want to make it a little bit easier to understand and digest. So once you open up the project file, I'm actually using the latest version of After Effects here, latest version of Creative Cloud, I should say. You'll see in the project window, there are 4 folders labeled steps 1 through 4. So really, all you do is just follow the steps down through here. We twirl open step 1. This is where all of our folders exist for whatever media that we need to import into the project, whether it's images or video, audio, whatever we are going to need to add to the project. We add them to these folders so that we know where everything lives when we need to find it. So simple enough. Moving on to step 2 is the global customization. This is where we will customize the overall colors, so we'll dive into that in the next tutorial. Step 3 is the title screen and the title screen animation only. This is separate from the actual stock ticker interface. So all title screen animation occurs within this composition, and we will cover that in the title screen tutorial. Moving on to step 4, just to kind of highlight what's included here. We'll open up the full interface just to give you kind of an idea of what's included. Now, this is kind of a half-built version of the interface once it finally loads here. Computer's being a little bit slow right now. So once this actually loads here, you'll be able to see that a number of the things here are kind of pre-built. I've got some video inserted and stuff just to kind of give you an idea of what the final could look like. So all of these elements that you see on the screen are separate. So you would grab them from the different folders and then drag them to the timeline here like we have to build your own presentation. But again, we'll cover all that in the subsequent tutorials. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview. Don't forget, it's sort of important to use the font that was used to create this project. You could use whatever font you want, but due to sizing changes and registration points and all that stuff, if you use a different font other than the Museo font that was used in this template, you just might create a little bit of work for yourself to go in there and change all of the text layers. But there's a link to the Museo fonts that were used in this project. So go ahead and click on the README file that's inside of the zip, so that you have all of the assets that you need to make this project work. And that should pretty much cover it. So move on along to tutorial number 2. All right, now that you've watched the introduction tutorial, we'll dive right in here to show you how to customize the global appearance of the project. So once we twirl open step 2, you'll see there's 2 more folders inside. Number 1 is labeled Insert Logos, and number 2 is Customize Colors. So if we open up the Insert Logos, there's a few compositions in here: main icon, main logo, and main title. So the main icon, and I've left the Envato logos in here just to kind of show you how this works as placeholders. So you'll likely want to remove these once you import your own logo. If you don't have an actual icon, just to fill the project out, I would use something here, whether it's like I don't know, like a check mark or something generic, just to kind of have it filled in, or whether it's a letter. Say your company name starts with an E, then you might type like an E in here or something like that, just to fill it in if you don't have an icon. And then the main logo comp, this is a horizontal comp that you use to drop your full logo into. If it doesn't quite fit, you could always scale it down. Just make sure that it's not exceeding the boundaries here. But if you have more of a squarish logo, then you can always scale it down if you need to. And then the main title, This appears in obviously the intro animation, and it also appears in the transition animations as well. Now, obviously, you might want to change the name of this title, but there's a few editable text layers in here, and if we highlight everything in the timeline and then hit the U key to show the keyframes, you'll see how the animation progresses. And so we could change the name just by double-clicking on it. So if the title of our project is Finance or Stock Hour or whatever the case may be, we could change the size of the font, this layer too, any text you want to add that fits right in there. So all of these things are fully customizable. As far as colors, we will come back to that in just a second. So we'll move on to the customize colors, and we open up that composition, and this comp is actually only 1 frame long. I did that just for efficiency's sake, basically. So make sure if you open up this comp and you don't see anything on the screen, it's completely blank, just hit the home key and the playhead will go back to the beginning and you'll be able to see everything on the screen. So just to give you an idea, this will look a little bit different when you open it up. For example, this won't be here. I'm going to turn this off just for a second so that you know exactly what this will look like. Let's see. Let's see these registration points as well. I just want to kind of clean this up real quick so that it appears properly. Let's see. This should be TIKR1. And just want to kind of go through here, make sure everything is set up properly. Had a bit of a registration point issue because I went ahead and customized this earlier, and now it's just a little bit off. But I actually don't think we're going to worry about this. I think I'm just going to leave this go. That's good enough. Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure that this looked proper to you. All right. So once we have our global color control composition open, this is where we can change the color palette of the entire project. So there's a main color, there's a complementary color, there's a color for the info panels, which appears in the background of the lower thirds, and the main panels that appear on the screen here, which isn't highlighted because I wanted you to be able to see the background color. And then we can change the color of our up and down arrows throughout the entire project. So main color, let's say, for example, instead of blue, we wanted more of like a red theme. You can see there, that's pretty bright. Could probably go a little bit darker. So there we go. And then complementary color, let's say instead of this dark blue, we want something a little bit, I don't know, maybe we'll go with orange. So it kind of fits more in the hue of the red background. And then you can change the color of the up and down arrows. Clearly up means, positive, down means negative, so denoting those in green and red is probably what you're going to leave them as. But if you wanted to make them brighter or darker, you could always do that. And of course, if you want to make your arrows a completely different color, you can do that as well. You can see how they changed. But we will revert that back. And then the information panel, denoted here by the top stock ticker panel and the lower third panel. If we change this top color here to maybe something that complements the look of our project a little bit more, now you can see it's kind of tinted red. I'll make that a completely different color so that you can see it a little bit better. And there we go. So that updates the tint of anything that has a white panel. We'll revert that back to the original. Actually, we'll revert everything back to the original. And I think that's it. But yes, I think that pretty much covers the entire color customization process. So time to move on to tutorial. Oh, I'm sorry. I almost forgot. So the one thing that you will have to do with the colors with the title, this is not the title colors are actually not affected by the global color control. So you can make these. You can actually customize this within the main title comp. So let's say you wanted this to be red, for example, and then we wanted this panel here. We could also change the color of that. So if we wanted it red instead of blue, so let's go to our title screen and just kind of see what this looks like real quick. I'm gonna have to let this kind of process. So there we go. Now you can see the title is actually a different color from the background. And I wanted to leave that separate because chances are you're not going to want your title to blend in with the background kind of like in the preview. You might want it to stand out a little bit more. So whatever color you want your title to be is updatable in the main title composition here. But I'm going to revert these back to the original. All right, and okay, I think now we're done customizing colors. It's safe to move on to tutorial number 3. All right, tutorial number 3, we will cover the customization of the title screen, which is contained within step 3, and then we twirl that open, and there's only one composition, the title screen comp, so we'll open that up, and let's see what we got here. So once we open this up, there's a bunch of layers, and we let it render, and we can see that our title has already been built onto the screen. There's a bunch of layers here. We can actually hide a bunch of these. I think I'm going to hide these before I pack this project up so that it's a little bit less cumbersome. But if we scroll through here, we can see what happens with our animation. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead to the intro to kind of scroll through here to show how it works. So in our title screen, the title comes in. We have a burst of light. It kind of rotates shortly, and then the transition mat takes it off the screen, like so. So it's a very short intro. Once the title resolves, it really only sits on the screen for about 3.5-4 seconds, which is probably just enough time as kind of a bump in, real short intro, and then we get into the heart of our show. So let's see, what can we animate in here? What can we customize? The main, let's see, I think I hid too many items. Did. The main animation of the title occurs on this title layer. So if we highlight that and hit the U key to show the keyframes, we'll see that the rotation occurs right here. So everything is actually parented to this main title layer. So if we want to change the speed or the steepness of the rotation, we would do that on this layer. So over the course of 2 seconds, it sort of eases in and then rests, and then sort of rotates slowly for a few seconds, and then begins to animate off the screen. But our transition mat actually transitions away before the rotation out begins. So there may not actually be much inside of this composition that you want to customize other than maybe the actual duration. But these 2 top purple transition mat layers, you want to keep those kind of connected and welded together. You don't want to let them slip like this or anything like that. If you want to make the composition shorter, you can do that by dragging these layers back, and as you can see, the transition will begin animating off the screen. And of course, if you do that at the end of these transition layers, you want to make sure, you might have to extend these out a little bit. Depending on where these rest, actually, as you can see, they're actually cut off by the end of the screen because we need to change where these rest. So we highlight them both, and then we go up to our comp window, and we grab the arrow and slide it along the x-axis, just so that it's covering up the rest of the screen, maybe a little bit more. And then by the end, what we have to do then is we can turn these layers off, actually, because they aren't going to be utilized, and then we need to shorten all of these other layers. So we highlight them, and then we hit Option bracket, end bracket, or you can just drag the endpoint like this and shorten them up, so that at the end of this comp, it's basically just dark. Oh, I need to do this one too. And actually, I need to do these as well. So I'm hiding and unhiding the shy layers to show these, so that at the end, now we no longer see them. Actually, I have to shorten these as well. So, okay, so that we transition to full alpha. So that's a way to shorten the animation. You can also elongate it or make it a little bit longer in duration if you wish, doing pretty much the same exact method, just in reverse. So we're going to revert back everything here. All right, we're good. But that is basically, other than customizing the title, which we covered in the previous tutorial, but I'll show you how to do that one more time real quick. Other than customizing this actual title, which can be done in the insert logos, we have our main title. So we can customize these text layers. They're all editable text layers, and we can customize the colors in here as well to whatever we want. So very simple, very straightforward. Since the intro is so short, there's really not much more to cover. So let's move on to tutorial number 4. All right, so moving on to the heart of this project, where we customize the actual stock ticker interface and input our stock information. We twirl open step 4, and this shows us where all of our elements are that we're going to build. Now, let's jump right to the bottom here and show you these two compositions at the bottom. One says full interface and the other says full interface example. The full interface example will show you an example of how a full interface might look once it's built. So it has a bunch of layers already dragged in from these folders, and they're in the timeline, and they're arranged in such a fashion where they animate on and off the screen. So this is just to show you what it could look like. But what we want to do most likely is build our own interface from scratch. And it sounds complicated, but it's actually fairly simple and straightforward and quick to do. So what we'll do is we'll open up the full interface composition, and clearly this is this is much more sparse and much more empty than the previous version. Really, all it is just the background loop. So what do we need to do to start populating our interface? Well, let's go up here and let's see what we have in the interface. Background, we have the first folder is backgrounds, and that's where we got this element from. So we'll twirl that open, and this is our background loop. So there's things within this background that we can actually customize. We'll let this load here real quick. There's a few layers. There's our grid elements, our grid numbers. There's the streaks that fly by on the screen. So if we don't like any of these elements, we can turn them off. Also, if we want to blur the numbers so that they're not as readable, we can turn this blur layer on. And as you can see, that blurs and obscures them a little bit without using the camera's depth of field attribute, which adds significantly to the overall render time. And obviously, we want to cut down on render time as much as possible. So you can further customize the amount of blur here by clicking on the layer, and make sure that your effects control window is open. And if it's not, just go to Window Effects Controls, and we can make the blur even more pronounced. Bump that up to 20, and you can't even see the numbers. So we can play with that. We're going to turn it off for now. Just going to leave it unblurred. But that's something that we can customize with these backgrounds as the base layer for our interface. So once we have the background customized, we can start actually dropping elements into our full interface comp here. So we'll move on to folder number 2, which is our top ticker. And what I'll actually do here is I'll open up this top ticker master so you can see how a fully functional top ticker works. Now, the top ticker is intended to be used as well, as the name implies, at the top of the screen. And if we scroll through here, we can see it changes over the course of time. Zoom in a little bit further so we can see the actual animation happening. Let's see, where is it at? Spins right, where are you? Right here. So right at the way this is set up now, I'll actually preview this so that you can see what's happening here. Let me zoom in. Okay, so zooming in, show you what the animation looks like here. So right now, as it's set up, right around the 7.5 second mark, our little modules at the top spin to show a whole new set of stocks. Now, just for placement purposes, these are kind of repeated, Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, crude, stuff like that, just generic things. But these stocks can be whatever you want, and that's what we need to customize. But just to kind of show you real quick, before we dive into these modules individually, let's go ahead and grab this top ticker master box, and let's throw it into our composition. Now, anything that we drag into our full interface, we want to make sure it goes under the adjust layer here. So make sure that all these layers that you're dropping in actually drop in under the adjust layer, which has a few effects applied. Nope, just curves. It just has curves effect applied, which sort of just darkens and enriches the color for broadcast purposes. But you can turn that off if you want. I just think it looks better with the levels a little bit more crushed. So now that we have the top ticker dropped in, that nestles itself right in the middle of the screen. So we can move that up if that's where we want it. And we can position it right outside, or I should say right inside of Action Safe. Let's go back to our example and see how this is set up. I'm going to isolate this so that we don't have to wait for it to render. So that's where we have it set up in our example. It's right inside of Action Safe. So that's where our top ticker is now. Okay, so how do we customize this top ticker? Well, let's go and open up one of these top ticker box modules to see how this is built. And this top ticker module number 1 is the first one on the left side of the screen. So there are 5 total, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So when we're referring to box 1, box 2, box 3, that's how you can relate to these 5 boxes that make up the top ticker. All right, so let's close this out real quick. So opening up top ticker box number 1. As you can see, it's isolated by itself. We already have some information input here. We have our numbers inputted. This was the Dow. And then as I was saying, at 7.5 seconds, it flips. And then every 7.5 seconds, it flips. So if you want to speed up or slow down the rate in which these modules flip, you can customize that here on the control layer. So this box is clearly made up of 4 sides. So we're actually calling them panels here in this project. It's made up of 4 panels. So if we open up panel 1, this has the Dow's number for the day, and all of these numbers and names are customizable. So if you didn't want this to be the Dow, and say you wanted this to be a stock like Chipotle, CMG, let's say it was trading at 430, and these are obviously made up numbers, so don't go by what I'm saying. And then let's say it was up, I don't know, 2 points today. Let's say it was 222 up today. So this is all customizable. Some other things within each one of these modules, or I should say panels, that are customizable. When you click on them, you can see in the effects control panel, if the stock was not up today and it was actually down, we can turn the red effect on. And we do that just by clicking this little FX box on and off. We can toggle that on and off by changing the color. And obviously we're going to change this plus to a minus. And then this little corner thing, we want to change that as well. And this says arrow red, arrow green. So in the timeline, we just change that to arrow red and arrow green. And now instead of green being in the top corner, the red's in the bottom right corner. So that denotes that the stock was down for the day. So now going back, that was panel one of box one. So the Chipotle stock then rotates to the next one, which was the S&P. So now moving to box one, panel two, which is the S&P, we can change this to say maybe another stock. We'll change it to Apple. And let's say Apple's trading at, 167. And let's say it was up. Let's say Apple was actually up a percentage. These don't have to be the actual numbers. You could actually do this as a percentage. So let's say it was up 1.56%. So all we have to do is add the little percent symbol there. And we go back to our main box and we scroll through and we see that CMG then rotates to Apple. And as you can see, so on and so forth. This is how we customize each box. So if we do that for each box, like say for example, your first three boxes could be actual stocks. Your last two, like your fourth box, could be it could be commodities, it could be futures, options, whatever. And then your final box 5, could be your composites, like your Dow and S&P, NASDAQ, Russell, whatever it is that you want to display. These boxes can be whatever you want them to be. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't really see any point in going any further with the top ticker. The top ticker does not animate onto the screen. It's just always there. So I recommend leaving the top ticker visible from the very beginning of the composition, since there is no animate in and out point. If you want to add animate in and out points, you can certainly do that by adding some position keyframes or scaling it up or fading it up. But there is no actual animation in and out of the top ticker module. So I believe that covers the top ticker. All right, so we just covered how to customize the top ticker. So moving on to inserting some video and other content. It doesn't have to be video, but inserting other content into the background. Now, if we open up our example interface, just to kind of see what video can be, we'll actually scroll this back here. I'll let this load real quick. All right, so the video is essentially a box here that sits on the left side of the screen, and that's basically all it is. It's a video box. It doesn't have to be video. You can do animations inside of it. You can even build additional graphics and interface elements inside of this. You can do text builds, stuff like that. But we'll go back here because this insert video folder actually contains a few other folders that we need to cover. So number one, the main window full video. So we open that up and these comps are basically just a blank box. You're going to edit video in here, whether it's you're covering a story about a corn drought or whatever sort of information you want to cover. You would edit all of your video inside of here. And you want to put all of this video inside of here as the bottom layer, so that the card wipe effect that actually transitions this off the screen if you wish to use it, so that it'll be affected. So you'll have to put all of your video in here as the bottom layer. Same thing with 2. This is just an example of how we can duplicate these compositions to contain as many elements as we need. So for example, if we needed 10 of these, we can highlight it in the project window and hit the Command D key to duplicate this as many times as needed. All right. So we have a video clip in here of some automotive, of a, I should say an automotive assembly line. And if you like these clips, you can actually download and purchase these clips through the link that we've provided in the README file. So go ahead and check that out. But that's just, so these main window full video comps are basically just that. They're just boxes for video. So moving on to main window partial video. What this is a blank screen essentially where you can add text, other graphics, other video. It's basically a place to put interview information as well. So this video insert, if we double click on that, I've actually imported some footage here. Again, this is available on Video Hive, so if you like this interview footage, go ahead and click on the link to purchase that clip. I also have a skyline image in here because typically you see, you know, these fake skylines behind people as they're talking during reports. So we have our interview guy in there. And then there's also customizable text. So let's say this guy's name is Mike Smith. And let's say he's the CEO of the company. How about the company? So there we go. So now we have an interview with Mike Smith from the company. And there's another layer in here that isn't currently active that you can turn on. It's the partial video main panel. And if we turn that on, obviously our text goes away because it's white. So we have to change the color of our text. So we can do that by highlighting all of these layers. And then we'll just change this to black. And now we can see our text again. And as you can see, it animates onto the screen. And we have our bullet points, which we can turn on and off. But all of this text is customizable. The header, if we don't want to use the header, we can turn it off. But so each one of these compositions it contains an automatic wipe out. So it animates in, but then depending on how long we want it to show on, within our main interface is where we would set the out point. So if we only wanted this segment to kind of show for 10 seconds, we could position this card wipe to go off at 10 seconds. But what if we want our interview guy to stay on the screen and this information just goes away? Well, we can just take this video insert and position it above the card wipe reveal, and now everything else will transition away, but our little interview guy will stay there. So how does this work within our interface? Okay, well, let's go back to our main interface, and let's drag this main window interview panel right into here. We'll make it the second layer. As you can see, the title is a little bit obscured by our top ticker. So what we're going to have to do is go in here and change the size of our main title. We'll just drop that down. Now it fits in there a little bit better. We can even move that down a little bit. I mean, we can turn it off completely, really, if we don't want to use it. So that's a little bit better. So as you can see, we sort of scrub along here, and our interface flies in. We have all of our information. Now this screen obviously looks a little blank because we don't have the rest of the elements input yet, but we'll get there. We're getting there slowly but surely. But that's pretty much that composition. If we move on to number 3, the information feed. all that is it's just basically a large block. Again, this comes on the screen. So let's see how this all might work together in the interface. Okay, so we have our main window, our main interview window that comes in. Actually, what we'll do is we'll start with a full video. Okay, so our first, the first thing we see is our full video. Let's say that plays for 5 seconds. We'll go in here, and this card wipe is already set to transition off the screen at 5 seconds, so that's perfect. So right at 5 seconds, maybe at about 5.5 seconds, we'll actually position our next interface to come on the screen, because our main video is transitioning off. Okay, maybe I'll actually position that here because it is apparently happening a lot faster than I thought. So our main video is transitioning off. And then our next element is coming on, which is the main window interview. And let's say that's on the screen for 5 seconds. And then we want to transition to our third full screen element, which is our main window information, just our large block of text. And that comes on the screen right as our second element is transitioning off. Now you can also shorten these layers if you want to. You can kind of truncate them so that they're not taking up the entire thing here, the entire timeline. And then this block we could set to transition off the screen. Probably a good time to note that actually the majority of these compositions, I believe, are set up for 5-minute durations, which is pretty long, but considering some of these shows can tend to need to be a little bit longer, that's why they're set up to be 5 minutes. So that's how we drop things into the timeline. I'm actually going to switch this up. I'm going to have the second element, or the third element, come on, and then I am going to have this element, our main interview window, I'm going to have that stay on the screen. So I am going to pull that back that far. Okay. So starting to build our interface here. But I believe that pretty much covers the insert video portion. So let's move on to the bottom ticker. All right, so we just showed you how to customize these main center video portions here. Let's go back here. Let's make sure. Okay, these are actually scaled. So we may actually want to, if we look at our example here, our full videos are actually scaled 75%. So let's scale those down and move those over to the edge here. Move it up to about there, I believe. So just kind of showing you here how all of this is modular. You can scale, move things around, customize the position, all that stuff. But okay, let's get into the bottom ticker. So we'll twirl that open. And if you've already gone through the top ticker, this kind of works in kind of the same fashion, but since it's a scroll, it's a little bit different. So we have a few compositions in here. Excuse me. The first comp here is the logo bug. And if you already insert your logo, then there's really not much more to do inside of here. But we'll just click through here and show you this is the scroll. So not much to customize here at all, except for inside of the ticker scrolls. This is where we want to begin actually building what we need to build. So if we open up a ticker lower 1 build, this is where the meat of this information lives. So this might not be the most efficient way of setting up a scrolling ticker, but without actually getting into complicated expressions, this is pretty much the only way to do it manually. And I think I've set this up in a way where it's relatively easy to customize, just requires a little bit of work. So we have quite a very long composition here. As a matter of fact, this comp is 12,000 pixels wide. So there's a lot of stocks here. In all, there's actually 37 stocks. Now, if you don't have 37 stocks to list, my recommendation to you is to actually copy and paste them so that they fill this entire composition. Because if you leave any empty space in here, it will actually mess up the scrolling ticker. But we'll get to that in a second. So just go into here and show you real quick that these are all editable text layers. It's actually one long editable text layer. But what we'll do is we'll just highlight the text that we need to customize. And let's say this is Apple stock, and let's say it's up. Let's say it's up 0.8% today. And then next stock, let's say that's Adobe. And let's say they're down 1.2% today. So you just go through here and you add all of your stocks. As you can see, the registration point is changing a bit, and the arrows are getting a little bit off-centered. So we can grab all of these arrows and we can move them this way. We can also lock this layer, the text layer, so that we don't accidentally grab it. Now, obviously, if, for example, ticker 3 is, let's say ticker 3 is I don't know, 3M. So let's say 3M, and let's say instead of being up today, they were down 2.4%. Well, they have a green arrow next to them, which is a problem. So what do? Well, we could probably just, the easiest way to do it is delete this green arrow, or we can highlight it, move it to the position that we need it, and go to our up and down arrows. And then while holding down the Alt or Option key, we can grab the red arrow and drop it right on top. So click and highlight, and while holding the Alt or Option key on the keyboard, click and drag and just drop it right on top. And now we have a red arrow. So that's one way to customize an arrow. So I'll show you with this red one here. The ticker 4 is, whoops, accidentally added another layer here. Let's not do that. Let's say ticker 4 is Chipotle. And let's say Chipotle was up today. So we'll position that where it needs to go. And drop the green arrow right on top of it. And let's change this to say Chipotle was really up today. Okay, so there we go. So we just go through here and add our stocks in. As I was saying, you don't want to leave any blank space in here. So let's just take what we've already done and let's pretend that we have a little bit of blank space in here, and I'm gonna delete the rest of the content that's in here. So this is what we don't want. We don't want any blank space, because as I was saying, it will kind of screw up the loop. So what we need to do is highlight all of the stocks that we've already input. Matter of fact, you probably want to grab a couple frames of or a couple spaces of blank text there as well. Copy that, and then right after the last slash, paste. And then maybe let's copy this again. We'll scroll down and we'll paste it again. And we can keep on doing this. We can actually mess around with the placement of things. We just want to make sure that we do not have any blank space. And I know this looks a little bit cumbersome, and it looks like it's time consuming and a pain in the butt, but I assure you that manually this is probably the easiest way to do this, without getting into extreme expressions, which I could not do for this project. Subsequent projects, I'm hoping to make this a lot easier. We'll do this one more time. Go down here. Well, we might need like 2 more stocks just to fill this in. Okay, we're going to remove 1 from it. We're going to remove this last one here. We'll remove the final slash as well. So, of course, we also need to go back in, and we'll actually put this layer all the way at the bottom again, the text layer. And now we have to go back and we have to position all of our arrows again, which I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing, but as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. I would say in a matter of like 10-15 minutes, you should be able to customize the entire bottom ticker, or at least one layer of it, since there's actually two different layers to the bottom ticker. There's an upper and a bottom, and a upper and a lower ticker. But I'm not going to spend too much time doing this. I also want it to look good, so just kind of wanted to show you how it looked. We'll pretend that some of these ones that don't have arrows were actually breaking even for the day. Why not? Actually reminds me, I should probably make a breaking even graphic for the next version of this project. But I want to make sure that this is all set up properly so that when it comes to showing you how to scroll works, okay, I think we might be good. Yeah, all right. So we have our bottom ticker set up, and I'm not going to go too far into the top ticker or the upper ticker because it's the exact same thing. It just doesn't have any arrows, which kind of saves you a little bit of time. You can just go in here and change the text for everything without having to worry about arrows. You could even drop arrows in here if you really want to. As you can see, I actually have arrows in here if you wish to use them. But same thing goes for that bottom ticker too. If you don't want to use the arrows, you don't have to, which would actually save time in the customization process. But you could just turn these off, and then we have a tickerless scroll on the top, which really isn't a big deal. So now that we've customized the builds of each, and those are right here, we can see the scroll occurs, and then we have our loop set up. And if we open up the loop composition, you'll see that there's still a little bit of a gap right at the end there. And this is our lower ticker. Let's go back, because apparently I did not fix those arrows at the end here. And now you can kind of see what I mean. Just fix these last arrows. All right. So now we're back in our ticker lower loop. And when this second layer comes in, and that's where the loop point occurs, there's a little bit of a gap. Now, it's not that noticeable, but if we wanted to, we could slide that back in the timeline by moving this. But I think I'm just going to leave it because it's not that bad of a gap. I think we'll just leave it the way it is. All right. So then when we go to our number 3, our bottom ticker scroll, you'll see for 35 seconds this scrolls, and that's that. And in our ticker master, this shows where we are at here. Now there's a gap here in the top one, so apparently I need to see what the deal is here with that top ticker. As you can see, there's quite a large gap. So I'm going to slide this back to here. And let's see, where are our control layers? Aha, I see. So yeah, there's a little bit of a glitch here that I will have to fix, but that will be corrected for the main version of the project. But in this number 4 ticker master, we just basically have a gigantic build of everything with all of our ticker symbols going by and our logo bug, and it's all in one self-contained thing. Actually, there's not much to customize in here because it's already all set up. So all we do basically is we open back up our full interface, and we'll grab this bottom ticker master and we'll drop it right on top here, and we'll have to position this where we want it on the screen, which is clearly at the bottom, just inside title safe. And this doesn't have any animate on or off the screen, just like the top ticker. So we'll actually change this color to blue too, so that we can keep track of what these different layers are. But as you can see, now we have a top ticker, we have a center element here, and then we also have our bottom ticker set up. So that covers the bottom ticker, so it's time to move on to the lower thirds. All right, now that we have our tickers customized and one of our center elements in here, we'll move on to lower thirds. And the lower thirds are very straightforward. We twirl those open, and there's 2 different kinds of lower thirds in here. And of course, we can make as many of these as we want. So if we need more than one lower third, which is likely the case, we just highlight it and then hit the Command D key to duplicate it. So as you can see, you can make as many of those as you want. But opening up the lower third number 1, as you can see, it animates on the screen, and then our text comes on, and these are all live text layers, so we can change this text to be whatever we want. We can also change the color if we wish. But then there's also the animate out, which so right now this lower third is set up to come on, or to animate off the screen at 27.5 seconds. So I'm actually going to make another one here. And let's say this lower third only needs to be on the screen for 10 seconds. So we'll position this right here. And we want to make sure that we take all of our layers and drag it back to the second little arrow there. And then it slides off the screen and animates away. And it's gone. So it just flips away basically. And there we go. So let's take our lower third number 2 that we just built and drag that into our full interface. And we'll actually change the color of this to like a yellow. And let's say our interface comes on, and 1 second into the interface, our lower third pops up. And now our lower third is in the center of the screen. So we're going to have to move that. And we'll make sure it's under our ticker. But we're going to move it. Let's see. We'll move it right. Where is it in our interface example? Let's see. Lower third. There's a little bit of a gap at the top. It kind of hangs over title safe there. So that's where we'll put it here. Kind of hangs off the end there. All right. Looks pretty good. All text is still within title safe. All right, so now we have our lower third in there. And let's see, what else is in this lower third folder? There's a lower third stock tab. And that's just a little tab thingy that comes up and has customizable text within it. Obviously, this can be whatever. You can change this to like Dow. And again, there's many of these that can be customized. So instead of just one, you can have as many as you want. Actually, we'll call this corn futures. This little line here, you want to make sure all the text is to the left of that little guideline. So we'll make the text size just a little bit smaller. And I don't know, let's say corn futures are, well, let's, as you can see, these actually should be green. So we'll just use our little eyedropper and we'll change the minus signs into pluses. And there we go. Okay, and then how does this work inside of the interface? Let's grab our new lower third stock tab, and we'll have that come up at the same time as our other lower third. Make that yellow. And let's position that right around here. Now, the reason I'm putting it here is because I've already insert the side panel graphic in this example screen, so we'll have to do that. Let's see, is this... it's 100%. All right. I'll actually put this back here so that doesn't animate off the screen, so that we can see this in full. All right. Okay. Let this render real quick, and there we go. So our interface is starting to come together. All right. So that pretty much covers the lower thirds. As I said, very straightforward. Not much more to really cover there. These obviously can be placed anywhere on the screen, so very, very customizable, expandable. You can create it as many as you want, but I think that does it. So we'll move on to the side panel. All right, so moving on to the side panel, this is where a lot of the content happens. So we'll open up the side panel master and we'll turn all these green layers off. So this this base layer, the side panel main, is basically just a panel in which everything else becomes built on top of. Now there's two options for colors. You can use the complementary color or the main color. This is the darker main color, so we'll go with that. And then we also have our side panel logo, which has our logo inserted, and we can change this to whatever we want it to say. This is customizable text right here. Nothing animated within here, just a graphic that's set up for the interface. All right. And then we have three different types of side panels. There's tabs charts, there's large tabs, medium tabs, small tabs. So we can essentially build our own if we want to. So we'll open up this first one here, and this animates onto the screen. As you can see, I'll actually pre-render that so that you can see it. There we go. So let's open this up. As you can see, we have a bunch of our medium tabs in here. Earnings, we have price, high and low, and then our individual stock tabs. So clearly we want to customize this stuff, so we'll open up Adobe and we can customize all of these numbers and so on and so forth. We can add things. We can even add different modules. So say, for example, if we wanted this bottom Intel layer to maybe be a small tab, we could just twirl that open and go ahead and drag and drop that on there, and now it's actually a small stock tab instead of a medium stock tab. So we can swap out these elements if we want. Another main element within here, if we actually open up this tab again, each of these backgrounds, you can go with the darker or the lighter version, depending if you want more highlight. And there's also the red and green arrows, depending on whether it was up or down for the day. And then this main slide off. So once these elements animate on, if you want it on the screen for, say, 10 seconds, and then this slides off the screen, all those elements slide up the screen. And another thing worth noting, you want to make sure to keep all the graphics in this panel above this line. So these are all kind of pre-built panels, the chart panel. So we can also make our own. So we'll do that real quick, show you how to make your own side panel. We'll just duplicate this last one here, side panel 4, and we'll double click to open that up. And we will delete all of this stuff. We'll leave the title text just to have it there so I don't have to retype it. But that animates onto the screen. And let's see, we can add some things here. So let's add a chart. Let's say we've added some video to our chart actually. We'll just put that right. We'll actually make it overlap just a tad to add some more depth. So we can actually position this at the beginning so that it comes on. And then let's add one large chart tab. Let's see, actually, how does this look in the other ones? Okay, so it is overlapping. All right, so we have one large chart tab, and let's say we have one medium tab. Position that here, wherever we wish. And let's say we have one small tab. So we have all of this, and then we probably want to stagger these in time so that they don't come on all at the same time, and it adds a little bit of variance in the animation. But let's go ahead and preview render this just to see what it looks like. So there we just built our own side panel real quick. And you don't even have to use these little side tabs if you don't want to use the whatchamacallit, the actual stock tabs. We could type text in here too. But one important thing worth noting is anything that you add to here actually needs to be parented to the bottom layer. So we want to make sure that, not the bottom layer, we want to make sure that any layers that we add here, we parent to the slide off layer so that when we position our slide off, it goes along with it. If we don't have those parented, as we just drop them in, they're not parented to the slide off layer, they're not going to slide off. So we want to make sure that these are parented to the slide off layer. And there we go. Okay, so simple enough. I think that pretty much covers our side panel. I mean, these chart tabs, you can drop, little chart renderings into. I'll actually show you how to do that real quick. I'm actually going to make this chart tab 3 or tab chart so I don't mess it up. But if this is a blank chart, we go up here. Let's say we input a chart rendering. Let's see, where are you? We drop our chart rendering in here. Maybe we scale it up so that it fits a little bit better, or scale it down, whatever the case may be. We can add some more text if we want. But again, we want to make sure that we parent this to this bottom tab layer. so that when it animates in, oh, we also have to make this a 3D layer because it needs to flip in. So we make our little image a 3D layer by clicking the little 3D box, and then we parent it to the bottommost layer, this tab chart layer. And now it animates onto the screen with everything else. Let's see, what else is in here? I don't really think there's anything else in here to really customize. I think that pretty much does it. But when it comes to actually placing these in the overall, full interface, we want to grab our panel master because this is where we want to build our main panel. As you can see, we have our custom panels built, and that's where everything animates in. So we have all of our timing set in the panel master. So we grab our panel master layer, and I think we're going to put that above the stock tab layer, and I think I'm going to leave that in there as full length. So there we go. Oh, we might actually have to scale this down. Let me see. Side panel. Oh. No, that actually fits in there. Okay. So as you can see, some of these chart tabs, you may need to like size down the chart depending on how it fits within. So we may have to say, we have to scale this down just a tad, move it up. Okay, now it actually fits in there a little bit better. Now we can see the whole thing. So there we go. All right. So now, as you can see, now that we have our side panel in there, this is looking like quite a full framed. We're going to turn this layer back on here. All right. So now this is starting to look and feel like a full, actual like CNBC broadcast or something like you would see on TV. And it's all animated. It's all fully customizable. And, well, I think that pretty much does it for the side panel, which means that pretty much does it for the majority of the interface, because next we are just going to cover the transitions and date tab. So let's go ahead and move on to either the transitions or the date tab tutorial. All right, so now that we have the majority of our interface built here, one of the last things to cover here are the transitions, and we twirl that folder open. We have two compositions inside, transition 1 and transition 2, and these are basically already pre-built. There's not much to do in here. One animates in from the left, one animates in from the right. There's just like this arrow animation with the main title background. You can customize the background if you want. If you want to mess around with the look of the background, like say for example you don't want the numbers in there or whatever the case may be. If you want to add the blur, you can add the blur. Bunch of stuff that we already covered in the past. You can customize in that background layer, but these transitions can be added to the timeline just like everything else to create dynamic transitions between elements. So say for example, instead of using our card wipe animations, we can actually turn those layers off, and now this won't card wipe, but we can go to here. Let's say we'll use transition. Whoops, they don't want to do that. We'll grab transition 2 and we'll throw it in here over. See, positioning is actually very important when it comes to these transitions, because depending on where you place it on the screen is what it will show on top of. So if I position this under the lower third and under the stock tab and under the side panel, but on top of all the main window stuff, it will appear in there. So as you can see, obviously doing it that way, the title looks a little bit weird because it's sort of obscured by those other graphics. So we can go into that background and we can turn off these title layers. Actually, we can leave the chart line, I suppose. If we go back here, now this transition just transitioned away everything on top of it. Let's sort of show you everything. Actually, let's transition away everything except for the lower thirds. Might look a little bit better for this example. So our transition, once it finally updates here, has basically wiped the entire screen under it except for the top and bottom tickers. So it comes onto the screen. Try to position this in a place where you can see things underneath of it. There you go. So transition in 1 and 2 can be used to transition certain elements off the screen. Now, say for example, you could still use this with the actual title. Let's just scale this down to say 75% and position it on top of our main windows. And now, if it's positioned only on top of our main windows, it'll act like, actually we can make this like 80% just to make it a little bit more covering. And now this will transition away only this content right here. So as you can see, it's only covering up what we can see here. And that actually works a little bit better. We can even cover up our lower thirds. And then, you know, from here, on the other side of this transition, we can have a whole new set of graphics come up that were different from the previous versions. So these transitions, I wonder if I can actually pre-render this just to kind of show you what this might look like. Let's see. Let's get rid of our lower third in our stock tab. And let's actually duplicate those and just put them here just to kind of show you animation wise what that might look like. Alright, I'm going to pre-render this here. Alright, so as you can see, we used our transition to transition away from everything before it. Actually, if I bring this back a little bit, just to kind of show a few more frames of what was there before the transition occurred, because that was a little bit fast there. And then the transition will kick in right about now. Nope. Come on, you can do it. Should be right there. It's almost there. Almost there. 1 or 2 more frames. Come on. It's getting there. Guess it has to re-render the whole thing. Alright, so now you can see we go from this screen right here, transitions to the next screen, and then there's a couple more lower thirds that come on the screen. So it's a way to refresh elements on the screen. You can even refresh the entire screen if you want to use this as a full transition. Like if we drop this right on top of everything, right here, this will actually cover up the entire screen as well. So there are plenty of options with the transitions, but I think that pretty much covers the transitions. So last but not least, let's move on to the date tab. Okay, so the final element to cover here is our date tab. Very, very simple and straightforward. We'll open up our interface here and then go back to the beginning, and we'll open up our date tab. And as you can see, it animates onto the screen. It just has a date. You can make it the time. This could be anything. You could make this say like 11:30 a.m. You know, it could be anything that you needed to say right here. And then we just grab that and we drop it. I like to put that right on top as the topmost layer, and then it animates onto the screen. Actually, we'll just scrub back here to something that we had. We probably might have to position it so that it fits within the graphics that we have here. But all you got to do is slide it down, and there we go. And it'll stay on the screen as long as you need. You can also scale it down a little bit. If we don't need it to be as large, we can maybe scale it down to 80 or 90%. I think in the example I have it, okay, it's scaled down to 75% in the example. So if we scale it down to 75, and there we go. Just hanging out there under the top ticker in that little corner there. And yeah. So just to kind of take this all in here, we officially have a fully built interface with 100% customizable information, and that pretty much covers the entire customization process. I hope it all made sense to you, but as usual, what I'll do is actually create one final conclusion tutorial to wrap it up, so go ahead and check that out. All right, so now we have a fully built, professional-looking broadcast interface for a stock or finance show. I hope you found these tutorials useful. I hope you have fun creating the project. As usual, if you have any comments or questions or concerns, we are reachable via our website, motionrevolver.com, or through the contact page on Video Hive through our profile. Or you can email me directly at tyson@motionrevolver.com. I don't believe I missed anything, but of course, if you need to get in touch, feel free. And once again, thank you so much for purchasing the project, and good luck with your project. So because of the longer durations of this project, creating a show about stocks and finance can typically run a little bit longer than your average project. And due to the 3D layers in the background, that can result in a rather hefty render time. So if you're running into issues with the project taking too long to render, I've set up an option for you to be able to use a pre-rendered background, which will significantly cut down on the render time. Now, the way you can activate that is by going into the background main composition and turn off all of these top layers here and activate these two bottom red background pre-render layers. Now, you'll be able to update the color, so whenever you change the global color in the global customization, that will change the color of the background along with whatever you want it to be. But obviously, you won't be able to alter the numbers or the speed in which things are animating here. So because this is all one flattened layer, but this does give you the option to create a much faster render. You can also still use this blur layer if you want the background to be a little bit blurred so that the numbers aren't as visible in the background. But I just wanted to give you the option in case render times were becoming a little bit too intensive.
Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.